Hi, this is Kimberley. This is a synopsis and a critique of Chapter 12 of My Daddy is a Hero, How Chris Watts Went from Family Man to Family Killer. The book is by Lena Derhally. The title of this chapter is, How Does It Feel When Someone Says, I Love You? The chapter begins with Miss Lena expressing that Shanann was both frustrated and confused by her bonehead husband's behavior. The book says, quote, On July 8th at 5:15 a.m., Chris texted Shanann to cover his tracks for being so distant. He said, I'm sorry, boo. I fell asleep as soon as I got home. The heat killed me yesterday. I love you so much. 3 exclamation points, end quote. Miss Lena says that Chris and shit was only trying to keep Shanann off of his back. Her trying to speak to her husband was intrusive and annoying to Pinhead. He was trying to carry on an underhanded and naughty affair with a promiscuous co-worker after all. The next day, Shanann took the girls to visit with Ronnie and Cindy. Chris and Shit's sister's 2 children were there as well. After lunch is when the clusterfuck train wreck unfortunate incident that was later coined as NutGate happened. Now remember, why is this not a shit show? Exactly, because shit shows are not recognized until after the fact, usually the next day. Now in this instance, even the children all recognized this as a clusterfuck as they took shelter behind the curtains until they were told they were leaving. All of the children had to leave immediately following the clusterfuck, with their designated adult who had been engaging in a rather loud and boisterous debate. Shanann left with Bella and Cece, Cindy with Jamie's children. It was best for everyone concerned to get out of Dodge, meaning to leave immediately with marked urgency and to evacuate or scram from a bad or dangerous situation. So, let's talk about NutGate. But first, ruh-roh, I see an error. I know this case too damn well for my spidey senses to kick in at the mention of a seemingly incidental sentence. Damn, did I miss another one of my callings? But I am the queen of black and white. In my ever so humble opinion, there are no gray areas in true crime. I will now recite from the chapter. Quote, Cece was so allergic to tree nuts and cashews that during her allergy testing, she vomited multiple times and broke out into hives after the smallest amounts were given to her. The little girl had apparently been diagnosed with an anaphylaxis reaction to the nuts, which is life-threatening. Children who experience anaphylaxis reactions must always have EpiPens because they could potentially die from ingesting whatever they are highly allergic to, end quote. So Celeste had the allergy testing after she had a serious life-threatening allergic reaction to cashews on December 10th, 2016. She underwent allergy testing at a later date. It was about a month or so later. Actually, I went to look it up. It was January 12th, 2017. This poor baby went for her allergy testing and she cried. It hurt her. Shanann stated on her Facebook that, quote, her cry went through me, end quote. I want y'all to appreciate how much time I spent looking for the exact dates on this, which the author should have done in my opinion. But I found a lot of new pictures in the process. But I knew it wasn't at the allergy testing that Celeste had her life-threatening reaction. How am I ever going to be able to do a book review on another case? The closest one that comes to this that I know is John Bonet. I also know kind of a handful of stuff on Delphi murders, McNabb and Courtney Bell, Layla Daniel, Jennifer and Joseph Rosenbaum case, Pamela Smart, Susan Smith, and Mary Kay Letourneau. I'm sure there's other cases, but those come to my mind right off the bat. So talk amongst yourselves in the comment about something that I should do next. Honestly, if something doesn't come up with a really new angle on the Watts case, I don't know how I can justify doing another one on Chris and Shit Asshat Watts. Like right now until something new comes out. Maybe something have or is about to. We will see. I'm only about halfway through this book right now, so it'll be a while before I make a decision on the next project. I'll do a poll at some point. And really, I'm still new at doing book reviews, so I'm not feeling too confident about doing a review on a case that I've not followed. But back to the book. I'm sorry, my ADD has just come into play here, and please, I beg your pardon. I left off at Cece had a life-threatening allergic reaction in December 2016. January 2017 is when she went for her allergy testing. And yes, it was confirmed that Cece was allergic to tree nuts. But my point of spending so much time at looking up the dates of Cece's nut allergy stuff was to prove to skeptical people like Cindy Watts that yes, it really did exist. It wasn't something Shanann made up for attention, just like when they quote-unquote disappeared and some people, including Cindy Watts, thought, oh, she just ran off with the kids to punish Chris. Bullshit. Y'all were so damn rough on her. Anyway, let me get back to the book. Miss Lena says, quote, Shanann was hoping the trip to North Carolina would be a bonding experience for the girls on both sides of the family. Despite all the tension that had transpired, Shanann had said to friends that she was always willing to try to put the past behind her and have a good relationship with her in-laws, especially for the sake of Chris and the kids. After lunch at Cindy's and Ronnie's house, the incident known as NutGate happened. Cece was so allergic to tree nuts and cashews that during her allergy testing, she vomited a couple of times and broke out into hives after the smallest amount were given to her. The little girl had apparently been diagnosed with anaphylaxis reaction to the nuts, which is life-threatening. Children who experience anaphylaxis reactions must always have EpiPens because they could potentially die from ingesting what they are allergic to. End quote. I'm not sure if Cece vomited during her testing, but I do know she broke out into hives both during the allergy testing and the cashew incident that had her wind up in the Children's Hospital emergency room for several hours. She did vomit multiple times during the cashew incident at home, and she was having an anaphylaxis reaction. This is Shanann's Facebook post from December 10th, 2016. Broomfield, Colorado. She was at Children's Hospital in the emergency room. Safe to say Celeste has a severe allergy to cashews. She had 2 small Tic Tac sized cashews and had an anaphylaxis reaction. Vomited all over me, gave her a bath, quick one, as I thought she was getting a stomach virus, and then I saw hives all over her mouth and cheeks. Rushed her to Children's after talking to Sarah, who is awesome, where she vomited again all over me 3 times. Extremely scary because of the way she was acting. Chris came from work, which I'm grateful for. They gave her EpiPen, Zofran, and prednisone, twice because she vomited the first one. 5 hours later, they are monitoring her and plan on keeping her for at least 4 more hours. Chris took Bella home so my mom can watch her while he picks up my dad from the airport. CW said in his Wisconsin interview that his mother did not take Cece's allergies seriously and that she always thought Shanann was overreacting, controlling, and overbearing. So she was willing to risk Cece's life in order to prove her point. Just shake my fucking head, you know? Let's all take a moment to refresh our memory that this is the mother of Chris Asshat Watts. She raised him. No wonder he hightailed it out of there the second he graduated from high school and turned 18. And this antagonizing old broad risked her young grandchild's life to demonstrate her lowbrow theory and trying to prove an invalid, uninformed point. Bye, Felicia. Go piss the hell off. I hope she shits the bed tonight. She could have killed Celeste. Well, her fucking son did. Is she proud of him? Are you satisfied, Cindy? Quote, according to the police discovery, Cindy's other grandchildren were eating ice cream that either contained nuts or were processed in a factory with nuts. It's also said there was a bowl of pistachios sitting out. Well, law enforcement never inspected their freezer or the Watts home, so we will never know for sure. But Shanann flipped the fuck out and became enraged over the state of affairs going on at her in-laws' house. When provoked, An angry person can, quote, lash out verbally. Anger is a powerful emotion, and the shit you say, even if it is out of the fear that someone will get hurt or die, can and will have destructive results for you and those closest to you. But sometimes you just don't give a fuck. I mean, sometimes you frankly and simply do not care in the least bit. But this prevailing situation escalated faster than a Twinkie at a Weight Watchers meeting. There was no time to be all composed and reasonable and shit. She was mad like Samuel L. Jackson mad. Remember when he said, quote, "Enough is enough. I've had it with the motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane." End quote. She could have changed it to fit her own scenario and said, "Enough is enough. I've had it with the motherfucking nuts in this motherfucking house. Everybody strap in. I'm about to open a can of whoop ass." You can use this versatile quote to fit your own needs. I'll include a link to this movie scene in the description. But Shanann was cross. She lost it. Snap. Got blackout angry and lost her shit. All of these emotional states of being are officially recognized states of hostility or impending war between two or more belligerents. The chapter reads, quote, Shanann had told people that Cindy had said the girls, quote, have to learn that they can't always have what they want, end quote. You mean a toddler, Cindy? Yeah, they have a lot of life experience and can be taught to control their yearnings and to know if something that they want to eat that the other children are having, well, yeah, they can be trained to inspect the ingredients label if a trusted adult isn't around. Or we can do your fly by the seat of our pants approach. If I die, then yes, I really was allergic. Fuck out of here, bitch. Excuse me, I failed to control my impulses and started running my mouth again. This is where we were. The chapter reads, quote, Shanann had told people that Cindy had said the girls, quote, have to learn that they can't always have what they want, end quote. Shanann expressed a differing viewpoint and implied that her mother-in-law was mentally deranged, but it came out of her mouth in a wild and aggressive way. What Shanann was struggling to make clear to her dim-witted mother-in-law is that they were, quote, 2 and 4 and shouldn't be taunted with ice cream when they couldn't have any, end quote. But she couldn't get her to listen and comprehend, so Shanann erupted and lost control, triggered by this unseemly event. In other words, she lost her shit. To say Shanann was in a blind rage was an understatement. Shanann called her father Frank to pick them the fuck up. In a hurry, get your ass in gear and head over here right the hell now type of situation. When one is told to hurry the fuck up, that means to start moving your ass instead of sitting on it. Miss Lena says it in a polite way for those that are tired of me cussing with the purpose of drawing attention to myself and to be different. In the sensitive to others translation, Miss Lena says, quote, she called Frank her father and asked him to come pick them up immediately, end quote. Shanann was fed the fuck up and was tired of their shit. She had tried several times to make amends over the years, but as far as she was concerned, they could fuck the hell off. Those are my words and not Miss Lena's. For those that don't cuss, telling someone to fuck the hell off is an offensive and vulgar way to tell someone to go away and that it is your wish to no longer see or talk to them. Even after leaving, Shanann was still extremely angry at her mother-in-law. She was full of fury, violent passion, and rage. Oh hell, she was pissed the fuck off. Shanann felt that the acceptable solution to her problems, due to anyone and everyone being so bloody annoying, was to take to social media. CW was not backing or supporting her, so what else was she to do? She knew she could find like-minded and accommodating individuals in a Facebook allergy support group that she was a part of. It is advisable not to mess with someone that is in a high level of pissed offedness, such as the way Shanann was. Miss Lena left off the part where she said something to the effect of F you directed towards Cindy on Facebook. She called Chris time and again to tell him how irate she was. She wanted him to call his parents and tell them off. Telling off someone is when you bitch at and cuss out someone for something stupid as fuck that they did. It doesn't even have to be something they did. It can be something their spouse, child, employee, parent, etc. did. Chris told Shanann that it was, quote, not cool at all, and that he would, quote, set this right. Well, he failed, but what he did do was call his parents and tell them he was through with Shanann. What a wuss, scaredy cat, whiny crybaby. He told his parents that he had seen the light. I wish you had seen the light, you lobhead. The light at the end of the tunnel when people are crossing over. Only that it was you and you alone, and that your wife and children were still here, creating their happy, blissful, and triumphant life without your sorry ass. Quote, the next morning Shanann texted Chris. She said, you okay? It's like you don't want to talk. I kept trying to talk and I had to dig it out of you. He said, I'm fine, baby. The last few days at work have put a lot of responsibility on me with new people. I didn't mean to be short, boo. I love you to the moon and back, Chris replied disingenuously. Yet again, end quote. Oh my God, he's such a fucktard. Shanann knew he wasn't being himself. She said he just wanted to work out and run. Fuckface said, running helps clear my head. It's a way to free it all. Is that what you called it? What you and Nikki were doing? Cricky? Running? I think you were running on empty. On July 14, 2018, Cricky went to the Shelby Car Museum, and CW took that opportunity to give in to his delusional reality and ignore 4 phone calls from his wife. Not your I'm getting a divorce and you're free to date wife, but your full-fledged spouse, still married, as in the person you are married to, the mother of your 3 children. This was a consensual state you entered into, you stupid-ass monkey. Then Miss Lena goes into Copycat Cadle's version of shit. That same lame story she told of Dieter showing Nikki around the house. I'll add the video I did on that at the end of this video. I just can't go into that shit again. Forgive me. But Miss Lena says, quote, she, meaning Nikki, was actively competing for him now and didn't seem like she was planning on backing off. Chris mentioned in his correspondence with Cadle that this was when the idea to murder his family started, end quote. Then Miss Lena continues, quote, during the rest of the afternoon, even when Nikki was not with him, Chris ignored all of Shanann's calls. How does she know this? I'm not digging into Discovery again. I'll assume it was from CCCC, which of course is Copycat Cadle Clusterfuck Conundrum. He spent 45 minutes on the phone with Nikki, and during that phone call, Shanann called him 4 more times. After he got off the phone with Nikki, he called Shanann back briefly and then spent the next 2 hours researching gems and minerals on his phone for Nikki, end quote. I do like that this author is covering different angles of the story. Unlike Cadle Scribe Scribble, who just did a big fat copy-paste of Discovery and other sources to do her own book, she also points out that CW was calling Nikki Boo, which is the same pet name he used for Shanann. July 17th was Celeste Catherine's 3rd birthday. She had a birthday party in North Carolina on the Saturday. I believe it was the Saturday following. It could have been the Saturday before. Sorry. Shanann had invited her mother-in-law and father-in-law, Cindy and Ronnie Watts. They never acknowledged the invite or showed up to the celebration. They also blocked Shanann on Facebook. This is said by both CW and Shanann's friend Cassie in the Discovery. There was a bit of controversy on who blocked who on Facebook, whether it was Shanann blocking the Watts or the other way around. CW said in the Discovery, quote, they should have swallowed whatever they needed to and came to Cece's birthday party and called her and shouldn't have blocked all social media contact with them. I don't care what they do with us, just as long as they love and respect the kids. I'm not used to having a relationship with my dad. I should have just called him before it got to this point where it got in my head. I didn't, and that's my fault, end quote. I'm pretty sure that's what Asshat said to Shanann in a text. He just doesn't know how to deal. Then I found something very interesting that I had not noticed before from August 4th, 2018. Shanann had responded to Chris's text with, quote, "Why should you beg them to be in their life? They pick up the phone and apologize for starters. They show up to her birthday, especially since we were an hour away. They did this. They make the effort. You blame me for this so-called dagger between you and him. Fuck that. You were just like them. Believe what he tells you and move back home where you weren't appreciated when I met you. No one ever protected you from your mom, and someone should have before me. I'm done being the bad guy in all of this, especially when I had more balls to stand up for you a long time ago with them. My bad for thinking you deserved better. Not my kids are in the pic and I'm done," end quote. Very interesting. This text alone should be the focus of a book. Why, Miss Lena, why didn't you dive into this? Is it later in the book? Let's hope so. The most interesting sentence out of this, or the most interesting two sentences out of this, was, "Believe what he tells you and move back home where you weren't appreciated when I met you. No one ever protected you from your mom, and someone should have before me." Wow. I wonder what all of that means. Apparently he had confided some stuff when he talks about his childhood was happy, happy, happy. Bullshit. At almost noon, Shanann added, "I'm not asking you to choose who to be with, and I shouldn't have to ask you to choose right from wrong. You are not happy, then you know where to go. Worst summer ever." Poor Shanann, she was talking to Halfwit as though he was a mature adult. And then 2 hours after that, Kessinger searched Google for Watts and Shanann's Facebook accounts. Again, very interesting. But back to the book. July 21st, Cricky went to the Bandamere Speedway. It turned on CW that Nicky seemed to be showing an interest in activities that he loved. He was used to doing whatever he believed Shanann wanted. "Well, did you speak up to Shanann, you clod?" Shanann was noticing the walls that her dumbass husband was putting up, but he continued to insist that everything was just fine and happy as usual. CW started searching the internet for minerals and gems, places to take Nicky on dates, and stupid shit like Spanish dancing near me. Can you imagine Cricky doing the flamenco or salsa dancing? Oh brother, what in God's name did these two oddballs talk about? The book says, quote, "Toward the end of the month, around July 24th, Chris started telling Nicky he was going to leave Shanann. Nicky, hopeful about this prospect, searched, 'Man I'm having an affair with says he will leave his wife,' end quote." Wait a minute, didn't she tell law enforcement that he said he was at the tail end stages of getting a divorce? I hate them. Shanann was getting pissed as hell at not being able to contact her dumb fuck husband. He was brazenly ignoring her calls and texts, and she was fed the hell up. He always had a lame excuse. One time his real reason was because he was searching for Victoria's Secret, but he claimed the tire light came on and he was investigating that. Now, a valid excuse would be because he was giving Dieter a bath, because he had been laying in his own excrement while he was ignoring that poor little Dotson while spending all of his time away at work or with Nicky. Fuckface asshat. Again, I hate him. Shanann started going off on CW because she was sick of the one-way communication. The book says, quote, "I realized during this trip what's missing in our relationship. It's only one-way emotions and feelings. I can't come back like this. I need you to meet me halfway. You don't consider others at all, nor think about others' feelings," end quote. Miss Lena says, quote, "Shanann was starting to pick up on the lack of empathy Chris was displaying. She was spot on. Chris cared only about his needs," end quote. "I'm sorry, I love you," Chris replied, continuing to tell Shanann what he believed she wanted to hear. But this tactic wouldn't work this time. Shanann was too perceptive and understood his actions did not match his words, says Miss Lena. Can we just call him what he is? How about a mendacious bastard, hypocritical bullshitting, double-dealing dickhead, moronic dipshit jackass, punk bitch motherfucker jerk-off, sleazeball tool, shamil, jagoff, dork, dickosaurus, asshead, nitwit, bozo, shitbag, dickhead, dipstick, wooden damn tarnation, lame, brain-dead, douchebag, fartface, pathetic, dumbfuck, half-wit, pitiful, booger-face, meanie-head, uncultured, know-nothing, whore, doofus, shitlord, numbnuts, douche kebab, sleazebag, jickweed, to hell with you, bite me, go fly a kite and jump in a lake, you fucktard. Then Miss Lena says, quote, Shanann was horrified that Chris had no sympathy for her and showed little interest in trying to connect with her. What she was picking up on was correct, because Chris really could not care less about Shanann, the girls, or anything about his life before Nikki at this point, end quote. I am so excited that she is giving her opinion now and sharing her interpretation of what was going on. It's so much better than just reading the dry discovery. The next day, Chris was trying to figure out what love is and what it feels like by conducting internet searches. This is kinda actually sad and very pathetic. Miss Lena says it was very odd, especially when he was leaving notes constantly to his wife, Shanann, about how much he loves her. Remember, he would write stuff on the pill packs or the vitamin packets. He would also say so in text too. Miss Lena said this is, quote, alarming insight into how emotionally void CW really was and is, end quote. And, quote, these are odd questions to ask at 33 years old when you supposedly married the love of your life and constantly leave her notes about how much you love her. One would assume that Chris already knew what love felt like, end quote. Also, quote, it was a chilling look at what a fantastic actor he could be, end quote. I never thought of it that way, but yes. The front porch sermon comes to mind very quickly too. I never thought of him acting before. That's very interesting to me. But yes, he learned to act by means of avoiding unpleasant situations, first with his mother and then with his wife, but really with anyone, at work as well. This is why he was always such a, quote, nice guy. But I think he learned it from his father. He watched and learned from his father how to be quiet, go with the flow, and how to avoid unpleasantness, especially in confrontations with his mother. Wow, that's my own insightful shit, not Miss Lena's. But later that afternoon is when Nikki left for Ass Clown. That creepy giggle voicemail that was described in the discovery is eerily disconcerting. I hope to God she didn't think she was being sexy, or maybe they were doing some nasty role play and schoolgirl bullshit. I'm not gonna include that damn voicemail in this video because it gives me the creeps. It literally makes my skin crawl. July 28th is when Cricky went to the Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. Nikki showed Ass Clown how to set up a tent and make a fire. She was playing the dominant role just as Shanann would do. Again, this is my own insightful observation. I'm pretty smart and shit sometimes. Fuckface continued to act like a loving husband to Shanann. That is, when he would finally respond to text messages. He would ignore her snarky remarks. She would dig at him for not being available to her, or when she would try and get him to talk about their obviously failing relationship. Y'all, hanging around Miss Lena in this book, I think I can soon add family counselor to my titles of Cyber Gumshoe and Private Investigator. At 7:30 p.m., the night before he got back from his camping trip, Shanann called Chris and he talked to her for 15 minutes. Right after they got off the phone, an agitated Shanann texted him, "Sorry you're so tired, but I haven't talked to you in 48 hours and I had a hard weekend. Glad I have you to talk to if you care," end quote. I wonder if he had anyone come over to check on Dieter that weekend. That poor pup, he must have been so confused. Quote from Asshat, "I'm sorry you had a hard weekend, boo. I will make it up to you, I promise." "I'm sorry, I'm out of it tonight," Chris replied, being duplicitous as ever. I had to look up duplicitous. It means deceitful, treacherous, disliplish behavior. Yep, she pegged it alright. Good job, Miss Lena. I'm loving this chapter. I mispronounce it. It's duplicitous. I love adding new words to my vocabulary. CW spent the next 24 hours searching for lyrics to love songs and other sappy crap like that. He wrote Nikki another card trying to express that new emotion of love that he had just found out about. And fuckface, just because you claim she took your breath away doesn't mean you have to take the breath away of your wife and kids. You let them go. Tell them that you have discovered you are a dumb fuck and to just trust you on this revelation, and that you feel mentally ill and have become addicted to a nasty, dirty girl, and that Shanann should take the girls and run like the goddamn wind. The chapter states, quote, "Throughout the day, he exchanged logistical text messages with Shanann about their alarm company, Vivint. Bella potentially dislocated her ankle, and they traded a few texts about that. In the evening, he texted Shanann, letting Dieter out and going to bed, boo. Love you." Ugh, he makes me sick. I hate him more and more with each passing chapter. I wonder if he will ever grow up. Hey, there's a thought. He could use the excuse that inside he is still an immature little boy. Then the judge could sentence him to going back to live with his mommy, and then he should be sentenced to letting her have complete control of him again, and he will be stuck in perpetual adolescence. Others, feel free to state in the comments what other ways his form of punishment should take. Then we will present it to the proper authorities. If nothing else, it'll help us get our frustrations out. But we have come to the end of the chapter. Peruse the comments as an entertaining way to extend the video. And please stay tuned for the Letters from Christopher video I did on the chapter that was somewhat similar to this one and explored when Nikki was shown the house by Dieter. It was Dieter's way to entertain himself and gave him something to laugh about while he spent so many hours alone. And that will be the end of this video. I will pick up with chapter 13 in the next one. Thank you for listening. Before I play the Letters from Christopher Dieter chapter that I was talking about, I wanted to read this what Shanann wrote on Facebook, and then there's a small video where Bella is talking really sweet to Cece. This was one day after the cashew nut allergy scare, and Bella just jumped into action, and this is really sweet. I'm going to read what Shanann said and then play the video. Shanann said, "You know you're doing a great job raising your kids when your 3-year-old acts like an adult in an emergency situation. Yesterday, Bella grabbed clothes, diaper, towel, and pad when I was washing Celeste after she vomited. Immediately when we realized we had to take her to the emergency room, Bella grabbed her boots and socks while I grabbed the diaper bag, praying it was stocked. She locked Dieter in his crate without me asking. She knows he goes in there when we leave. Climbed into her car seat and tried to buckle herself." Oh, this is so sweet. "And tried to buckle herself while I packed Celeste in the car. At the hospital when Celeste had another episode, I glanced over in the middle of the craziness to make sure she was there and okay, and the look of concern on her face made me cry harder. Afterwards, Bella wouldn't leave Celeste's side and kept kissing her and telling her that she loved her. Today she has been extra sweet with Celeste, saying she doesn't feel good. She covered Celeste in this video this morning and saying to her, 'Talk about mommy,' was in tears again." Thanks guys, stay tuned for the next video.
Don't cover her eyes. You gonna finish singing?
Hi, this is Kimberly. This is a synopsis of Chapter 6 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. Books by Cheryln Cadle, and this chapter is entitled The Mistress. Alright, in this chapter, I was completely taken off guard by the first sentence. If it was done that way for its shock value, then it certainly did its job. Truth be known, I had to stop reading and compose myself. This is what it said. Christopher has not told the FBI, but as soon as Nikki told him she wanted to have a first with him, he started planning on how he could kill the baby so he could give Nikki their first together. I mean, when I read that, it just, I don't know why, because I've been following this case for a long time, but it just floored me. I had to stop reading and I went to bed. This was like night before last. I mean, what the hell? What, Chris is such a highly disturbed person. That's not even the right words. But this chapter, The Mistress, was only 3.5 pages in the book. I know there's a whole lot more to The Mistress than that. Instead of how the relationship began and that sort of thing, we get the Reader's Digest version of the 2 times Nikki came to Chris's house. Supposedly, the second time she was there, Dieter led Nikki up the stairs. Okay. And NK, Nikki, then saw pictures of the family. My guess is the house looked like a mansion in comparison to her apartment. And don't tell me Nikki didn't poke her head into all the bedrooms upstairs, and especially into Shanann's office. I wish Shanann had like a camera in there that, would click on and go to her phone. But anyway, my mind started to wander while I was reading this. I don't know. Anyway, what it wandered to is I remembered an excerpt from this book promoting it on Facebook that I had saw weeks ago. And this was before the Letters from Christopher Facebook page was taken down. Through gossip, I've heard that it was taken down because people were flipping out over the non-delivery of their books that they pre-ordered through Dorrance Publishing for $19 plus shipping. I think the shipping was maybe $7. I could be wrong. And it was $12 at Walmart with free shipping. And the people that pre-ordered got their books last. So people were mad. I don't blame them. I wasn't even going to read this book, but there started to be so much controversy. I had to look into it more. But back to my bit that I was telling you about the excerpt I got, or that I saw on Facebook. I got a message from someone, or a comment rather, on one of my videos, and it said, and I quote, "About to drop a book. Will you do a documentary on it?" And that was it. And will, in the second sentence, as in will you do a documentary on it, was not capitalized. And there was no period, or there was no question mark at the end. It was a period. And then there was a link provided. So I clicked on the link, went down the rabbit hole, and I read one sentence, the very first sentence that was promoting the book, and it had bad grammar. So I laughed and left and just was like, whatever. And I remember it saying something about Nikki being froze on the stairs instead of frozen. I had no idea at the time that this author had actually been corresponding with Chris Watts himself. I just thought it was another one of those copy-paste from the Discovery books that I've seen on Amazon. There's been a lot of those. And truth be known, I do think some of this book is copy and paste from the Discovery. But I'm getting away from this chapter, this very short chapter where the author wildly skips over so many important things, in my opinion. Remember, it's entitled The Mistress. So after Shanann and the girls went to North Carolina, Nikki went into full-scale pursuing Chris mode. She wanted him to stay at her place all the time. She did not include him in her group of friends to begin with, but that was coming later. And that's all that's said about that. The author says that Nikki was at the Watts house twice, once on July 4th and once on July 14th. She tells the story that we've already heard in the February Wisconsin interview that Chris did with CBI and FBI about Shanann was blowing up his phone on the morning of July 4th. And so he stepped outside at Nikki's apartment where he had slept over the night before and was talking to her. And then he said that he had to go home. And she got really pissed off. I guess they were supposed to do something that day. And it just made me wonder if Shanann was wanting to FaceTime with Chris or something. And of course, he wouldn't be able to do that at Nikki's apartment. Anyway, he went home and it pissed the hell out of Nikki. And she didn't like being the side chick. Those are my words, not the author's, about being a side chick. But anyway, he went home and she showed up later with the ruse of helping him with a protein diet plan. And it seems like she started to worry, says the author, if he was considering going back with his family. She had had him to herself for over a week, and now he was back on his turf. And Cadle says she knew if he was alone in that house with all of the memories and pictures of his family, he might decide his life was too good to give up. How does Mrs. Cadle know this? Did she interview Nikki? I highly doubt it. Did Chris tell her this? Maybe. If he did, how does he know this? Is that what Nikki told him? I have many unanswered questions. I always did ask a lot of questions, and it drove my parents crazy when I was a kid. It's mentioned in the discovery during the interview with Shanann's friend Cassie. Within the first week of Shanann being in North Carolina, she and Chris were not even talking on the phone much. Well, that would be because Chris and Nikki were spending every minute together. He spent the night at her place every night. They worked at the same company, so they were, pretty much together during the day. If he was in the office, they would spend weekends together. And I find it hard that Nikki believed she was under the impression of them getting a divorce. As much time as Chris and Shanann did speak on the phone and texting and stuff, and of course he always had to step away from Nikki when he was talking to her. So anyway, July 14th, Cadle says they went to the Shelby Museum. And I'm a stickler for correct details, so I looked this up, and yes, it's a museum, but it's called the Shelby American Collection, and it's in Boulder, and I'm just wondering, why not include little interesting tidbits like that? Anyway, they stopped by Chris's house afterwards, and before going out to get something to eat, this is when Dieter led her upstairs. And that's in quotes, led her upstairs. The only dog I've seen lead people anywhere is Lassie. Now, I don't have a dog, but I did many years ago and when I was a kid, and they always followed me around, not the other way, with the dog taking me places. So I just can't picture Dieter showing Nikki the house. And if I remember correctly from when I went to the Facebook page one time, the Letters from Christopher Facebook page, there was an excerpt that said that Nikki realized the family would be, quote, broke to pieces because of the affair. And that was an excerpt I found before the release, and it's since been corrected in this version that I have. And I just wonder if it was because so many people mentioned on the Facebook page that the book was filled with bad grammar that books were late in going out. It's just a thought I had. But then supposedly Nikki flopped on the couch and was being all sad and stuff after the house tour. She started questioning Chris if he was really wanting to give all of this up, etc. And he mentioned casually that right before he met her, he and Shanann had been trying for a baby. Well, she just flipped the hell out on him and started dropping the F-bomb. She stormed out of the house and went and sat in her truck outside. And they furiously texted one another back and forth for about 30 minutes while she sat out in front of the house. Supposedly, this is when Chris talked her off the cliff. And also mentioned in this chapter is that Nikki took some medications and Chris believed her to be bipolar. And then when she was sitting in the front of the house texting, I wonder if Dieter was perched on the back of the couch looking out the window and laughing at her. I bet he was pleased with himself, showing her pictures and stuff, that then, having it cause an argument between the cheating Chris and his mistress. Dieter knew she wasn't supposed to be there, and I just wish Dieter could have been interviewed by the detectives. But Chris told Nikki he didn't want another baby with Shanann. Apparently, this is the statement that calmed her down. And the author states that he failed to mention that Shanann was already pregnant. And so I was looking in the discovery in the interview that they did with Shanann's friend Cassie. The discovery said it was Chris that wanted a third child. He is the one that talked Shanann into having a third child. And Cassie always said before Shanann left for North Carolina, she and Chris were having sex 3 times a day. Shanann told Cassie that Chris just couldn't get enough of her. Well, I think that's because he was doing some heavy-duty flirting with Nicole at that time, Kessinger. I'm not sure of exactly when their relationship started. It should mention it in this chapter, but it doesn't. Discovery says that on June 14th, Chris Watts enters co-worker Nicole Kessinger's contact information into his phone. Well, it just so happens that June 14th, when he did this, that was the exact same day that Shanann recorded the video of Bella singing the Daddy song. So anyway, Nikki went on for the rest of the day, July 14th, and acted like nothing happened after Chris talked her off the cliff. And she was having her bipolar episode. They went back to her place and quote-unquote made love. I've never heard of Chris describe it that way, so maybe this is the author's interpretation. The author said, quote, he felt the guilt rush back to him and he really didn't want to be there, end quote. I found that very interesting. But after this session of lovemaking, in which Nikki did her best to make it hot and passionate, this is when Nicole told him, and the author quoted Nikki as saying, quote, I got mad because I thought I could give you your first son. When you told me you and your wife were trying to have a baby, that made me really mad and it scared me, end quote. This is supposedly a direct quote from Nicole Kessinger. So how is the author able to provide this quote? She doesn't say it's from Miss Kessinger. She doesn't say it's from Chris relaying it to her. It's just a quote from supposedly from Nikki. And I know that I'm picking apart this book and this author. That was never my intention when I started this synopsis series. I was just going to provide a short summary of each chapter, but I know it's turned into this, but it's annoying me that she seems to have rushed through this book. It was only 8 months from her first letter that she wrote to Chris and then to the book release. That's a short period of time, really. And remember, it was a month later from her first letter that she heard from Chris, of which she didn't answer his letter, prompting him to tell his mother on her. So Cindy called Mrs. Cadle. So yeah, this seems to be a rush job. No, I've never written a book. I know people will say that, but I did have a short stint as a newspaper reporter and staff writer for the newspaper. So when quoting people, I always had to be very careful, and this is probably why it sticks out to me. Excuse me, I have a cold if I sound funny, or funnier than usual. But Nikki supposedly said, quote, I got mad because I thought I could give you your first son, end quote. So, and supposedly she didn't even know Shanann was pregnant because Chris said he didn't tell her, much less being pregnant with a boy. So the sex of the baby had not been discovered yet, and that wasn't discovered until August 8th when she had that 3D ultrasound, or 4D. And this conversation about wanting to give him his first son took place July 14th, 25 days beforehand. I hope you follow what I'm trying to say here, but Chris insisted they were getting a divorce, so I don't understand this quoted statement Nikki supposedly made. He said they were trying to have a baby. He didn't tell her she was pregnant, much less tell her she was pregnant with a boy. So something doesn't sound right here to me. And then remember, the first sentence of this chapter was, Christopher has not told the FBI, but as soon as Nikki told him she wanted to have a first with him, he started planning how he could kill the baby so he could give Nikki their first together. So, I mean, first what, boy? First baby? I mean, the sex of the baby hadn't been discovered yet, and supposedly that's when he started planning. So either words are twisted or something. And then supposedly she's quoting things that Nicole Kessinger said, but I don't know that she interviewed Nicole Kessinger. So actually, if this were in court, it would be hearsay, which wouldn't be admissible. Anyway, I'm confusing myself even, but all the while Shanann was trying to save their marriage. She begged him to talk to her to be more descriptive of his thoughts and wants, but he was being very passive-aggressive with her. He wouldn't cooperate, and he was too chicken to tell her that he wasn't interested in fixing things. I wanted to know more, for example, how did Chris and Nikki act together at work? I don't know if more is coming in future chapters, so I can't complain too much, I guess, at this point. But Cadle says in this chapter, after that happened, she said the sex was down to 1 to 2 times daily. How does she know Kessinger said that? Was that in the discovery? Did she talk to Nikki? Like, how does she know that? Is what I want to know. I doubt that she actually talked to Nicole Kessinger. So she doesn't say where she gets her information. And as I mentioned last time, that drives me crazy. And then the last sentence in the chapter mentions vaguely that they went to the Bandamere races, which I looked it up. And I lived in Colorado for 4 years, so some of these places are familiar to me, and I had been there. So I knew it was called Bandamere Speedway, but she misspelled it. But the last sentence in this chapter mentions they went to the Bandamere races on July 21st and camping in the mountains July 28th and 29th, period. There is so much more to the story. For example, NK is a geologist. Chris has a keen interest in cars, so it looked to me as though they were taking turns with each other's interests. And the author called it camping in the mountains, and while this is technically true, the place they went to was called the Great Dunes National Park. I looked this up, as the author should have done, in my opinion, to make sure she had the correct make sure I had the correct spellings is something I would have done. But there's a huge backstory to this Great Sand Dunes National Park and how it came to be. So that is something that would interest Nikki as a geologist. And then they camped at Zapata Falls Campground. Why not mention this? It deserved more than one sentence combining those 2 weekends together. So I know I've been chattering on, and it would have actually taken me less time to read the word for word than it did for me to go off track trying to describe it. But I was sort of surprised how the chapter entitled The Mistress was so short and offered so little. The chapter left me very unsettled. It's incomplete for one, and I spent a lot of time cross-referencing it with the discovery. But I'm just thinking, what a golden opportunity this author had. I know I'm being critical and rude, but if I had been given this opportunity, it probably would have taken me at least a couple of years to write this book. In fact, this case is so complex, it would have taken a team to compile all the information and cross-reference it. And it should, to me, would be a very long book, and I wouldn't even want to tackle something so complex. But this is where I'm going to step down from my soapbox and end this video. and I will pick it up in chapter 7 in the next one. Thank you for listening.